January 15th, 1966, 3 a.m. 5 bullets ended the life of Nigeria's Prime Minister, but the man who pulled the trigger claimed he was saving the country. This is what they never told you. In 1960, Nigeria stood on the world stage as Africa's giant, newly independent, full of promise and rich beyond imagination. But beneath the smiles and celebrations, cracks were already forming. The nation was large, too large. Some said with more than 250 ethnic groups trying to live under one flag. In the north, the powerful Sardauna of Sokoto, Sir Ahmadu Bello, led the conservative Northern People's Congress. In the west, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, the visionary premier of the western region, pushed for rapid modernization. And in the east, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Zik of Africa, inspired millions with his dream of unity and progress. At the center of it all was Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Nigeria's first Prime Minister, a quiet, humble man often called the golden voice of Africa. His calmness brought stability, but also gave room for rivalries to grow unchecked. Between 1960 and 1965, Nigeria's democracy began to shake. Elections turned violent. Politicians fought bitterly for power. Corruption spread like wildfire. And the military, once proud and disciplined, started whispering in the barracks. Many officers felt the politicians had betrayed the dream of independence. Among them was a young, idealistic soldier named Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu, bold, outspoken, and fiercely patriotic. To him and others, Nigeria's unity was collapsing under greed, tribalism, and injustice. By the end of 1965, chaos had replaced hope. The western region was burning in election riots. The north distrusted the south, and the east quietly watched, waiting. Few knew it then, but Nigeria was standing on the edge of something dark. A storm was coming, one that would change the country forever. Every revolution has a face. For Nigeria's first military coup, that face was a 29-year-old soldier, Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu, born in 1937 in Kaduna to Igbo parents from Okpanam near Asaba. Nzeogwu grew up between two worlds, the north where he was raised and the east where his roots lay. He was known as disciplined, brilliant, and deeply patriotic. Nzeogwu trained at the prestigious Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst, England. There, he learned not just how to fight, but how to lead and how nations fall when corruption eats from within. Fellow officers described him as fearless, blunt, and allergic to hypocrisy. When he returned to Nigeria, the new nation was already cracking under political greed. Nzeogwu watched as leaders fought for power instead of people. To him, the independence dream had been hijacked. Among the young officers, whispers began, "Can we fix this country?" Nzeogwu believed they could. But unlike others, he wasn't content with talk. He wanted action. He was not a man driven by tribe or religion. He was driven by a burning sense of justice, a belief that Nigeria needed cleansing, even if it meant blood. His close friend once said, Nzeogwu was the kind of man who would rather die for what he believed than live with compromise. By late 1965, his patience had run out. To him, the politicians had failed, the system was rotten, and only the military could save Nigeria from itself. And so, In secret, he began to plan. A plan he believed would purge corruption and restore honor to a dying nation. He called it Operation Damisa, the Tiger. What started as a dream of cleansing would soon become one of the bloodiest nights in Nigeria's history. In the months leading to January 1966, a silent storm was gathering inside Nigeria's army barracks. Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu and a small group of young officers were plotting something unthinkable, a revolution to cleanse their country. They called it Operation Damisa, the Tiger. The plan was simple but deadly. In one night, strike across Nigeria, remove the top politicians and senior officers they believed had destroyed the nation, and restore discipline and honesty. Nzeogwu's base was Kaduna, in the north. In Lagos, the capital, Major Emmanuel Ifeajuna, a former Olympian, led the southern cell. Other officers like Chris Anuforo, Timothy Onwatwegu, Adewale Ademoyega, and Humphrey Chukwuka each had their roles. Together, they formed a network bound by secrecy and idealism. They drew up a list of men to be captured and others to be eliminated. At the top were the most powerful figures in the country: Prime Minister Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Northern Premier Ahmadu Bello, Western Premier Samuel Akintola, and key military leaders like Brigadier Zakaria Maimalari and Colonel Kul Mohammed. Every move was rehearsed, every road mapped out. They were soldiers, after all, trained to follow orders without hesitation. But this time, the order was their own. To them, it wasn't about power. It was about salvation, which was saving Nigeria from collapse. They believed that once the corrupt were gone, a new dawn would rise. On January 14, 1966, on the eve of the coup, across Kaduna, Lagos, and Ibadan, the conspirators waited for the signal. Radios were tuned, vehicles fueled, weapons loaded. The Tiger was ready to strike. And before the next sunrise, Nigeria would never be the same again. It was a Friday night, January 15, 1966. Most Nigerians went to bed believing tomorrow would be another ordinary day. But as the clock struck midnight, the silence was broken by gunfire. The coup had begun. Operation Damisa was in motion. In cities across the country, Lagos, Kaduna, and Ibadan were full of soldiers loyal to Major Nzeogwu, moved out to strike. In Kaduna, the northern capital, Major Nzeogwu led his men straight to the residence of Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Sardauna of Sokoto, the most powerful man in northern Nigeria. The Sardauna's guards fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. Gunfire ripped through the night. Within minutes, the Sardauna, his wife, and several aides lay dead. The man many saw as the symbol of the North was gone. In Lagos, another group moved against Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa. Soldiers stormed his official residence. They ordered him into a vehicle. No one knew where they were taking him, not even him. The man who once spoke proudly of peace and unity was now a captive of his own army. Across the city, chaos spread. Brigadier Zakaria Maimalari, one of the most respected officers in the army, was shot dead while trying to escape his home. Colonel Kul Mohammed and Lieutenant Colonel Abogo Lajama also fell that night. In Ibadan, Premier Samuel Akintola made a desperate stand from his mansion, returning fire until he was overwhelmed and killed. By dawn, the sounds of gunfire had faded. The coup had claimed the lives of some of Nigeria's most powerful men, and with them, the first dream of democracy. To some, Nzeogwu and his men were heroes and soldiers who dared to fight corruption. To others, they were killers who destroyed a fragile nation's peace. As the sun rose over Lagos that morning, the Prime Minister was still missing. His seat in Parliament sat empty, and Nigerians woke up to a country that would never be the same again. By morning, the gunfire had stopped. The coup was over, or so it seemed, but one question remained. Where is Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa? Taken from his home the night before, no one knew his fate. For days, his whereabouts were a mystery. Rumors spread across the country. Some said he was being held in Kaduna. Others whispered that he had already been killed. The truth, even now, is clouded by silence and secrecy. Some reports claim that Balewa was shot on the road between Lagos and Abeokuta by the soldiers who arrested him. Others believe he was taken into custody and later suffocated inside a military vehicle. A few accounts even suggest he died of heart failure, overwhelmed by the shock and humiliation of being overthrown. What is known is that on January 21, 1966, 6 days after the coup, his body was found by a roadside near Lagos, sitting upright beside that of Finance Minister Festus Okoti-Ebo. The two men had been missing since the night of the coup. Their discovery confirmed what many feared. The government of Nigeria was dead along with them. For many Nigerians, the news hit like lightning. Balewa was seen not as a perfect leader, but as a symbol of dignity and calmness. A man who tried to hold a divided nation together. His gentle voice, once heard across Africa's airwaves, was now silent forever. Even the coup plotters gave different stories. Major Nzeogwu claimed later that Balewa's death was not intentional and that he never ordered his killing. But others insist that his death was part of the plan to cleanse Nigeria of corruption and weak leadership. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened in those final hours. Was he executed? Or did his heart simply give up? The truth lies buried with him. But one thing is certain. With Balewa's death, Nigeria's innocence died too. The country had crossed a line it could never step back from. When dawn broke on January 15, 1966, Nigerians woke to a country they no longer recognized. The streets were quiet, but the air was thick with fear and confusion. Then, from the crackling speakers of the radio came a voice, calm, confident, and unfamiliar to most Nigerians. It was Major Chukwuma Kaduna Nzeogwu. We, the soldiers of the Nigerian Armed Forces, have taken over the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. His words echoed across the nation, announcing the end of the old order and the beginning of something new and uncertain. To some, Nzeogwu's message sounded like hope and a promise to end corruption and tribal politics. But to others, it was a nightmare and proof that Nigeria's democracy had been assassinated overnight. In the south, some quietly celebrated, believing the coup would bring justice and fairness. But in the north, the news struck like lightning. The deaths of Ahmadu Bello and Balewa, two of the region's greatest sons, felt like a targeted attack. Anger, fear, and suspicion began to rise. Across the country, soldiers took control of government buildings, radio stations, and roads. The First Republic, The dream that began in 1960 had collapsed overnight. Days later, the mystery surrounding the Prime Minister ended when his body was found along a dusty roadside near Lagos. The discovery confirmed what many already feared. Nigeria's foundation had been shattered. In just a few hours, the world's newest democracy had fallen to its own army. Hope had turned to heartbreak, and the events of that single night would haunt the nation for decades to come. But this was only the beginning. The chaos of January 15 would soon give birth to something even darker. After the January coup, Major General Johnson Aguiyi-Ironsi took control of Nigeria. Calm, thoughtful, and respected by many, Ironsi promised stability. But beneath the surface, resentment was brewing. In the north, officers and civilians alike believed the coup had targeted them. The deaths of Ahmadu Bello and other northern leaders were seen not as mistakes, but as an attack. Anger and suspicion grew like wildfire. Just 6 months later, in July 1966, a counter-coup erupted. Northern officers rose against Ironsi's government, killing dozens of Igbo officers and civilians in a brutal wave of revenge. Nigeria had entered a spiral of ethnic mistrust, fear, and bloodshed. The events of January and July 1966 planted the seeds of the Nigerian Civil War. A war that would claim over 1 million lives just a few years later. For decades, Nigerians have looked back at January 15, 1966, not just as a night of assassination, but as a warning, a reminder of what happens when politics turns violent, when trust breaks, and when power is seized by force. The blood spilled that night, and in the months that followed, never truly dried. It echoes in politics, in leadership struggles, and in the hearts of Nigerians today. One night, one coup changed a nation forever. The lessons of January 15 are as urgent now as they were 60 years ago. January 15, 1966 was more than a coup. It was the night Nigeria lost its innocence. A night when dreams of democracy, unity, and peaceful progress were shattered by fear, suspicion, and blood. History teaches us that leadership carries responsibility, and that power without accountability can destroy nations. It shows how fragile unity can be, how quickly trust can crumble when greed, fear, or vengeance take its place. But it also reminds us of resilience. Despite the pain, the country endured. The memory of that night continues to whisper lessons to every generation: to cherish peace, demand honesty, and respect the lives of those who lead. Could it have been prevented? Could dialogue, compromise, or empathy have saved a nation from bloodshed? We may never know. What we do know is this: history does not forget, and neither should we. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep history alive. Thank you.